Well, disaster management is something that strikes home for Liberal MP Angus Taylor. The Assistant Cities Minister's electorate of Hume now takes in the town of Picton, which was badly flooded on Sunday night. And Angus Taylor joins us from Sydney. Mr Taylor, first of all, what is the clean-up situation there? We saw you with the Prime Minister just a couple of days ago. How has that town of Picton recovered?
Well, it's been extraordinary, Greg. I was there very early on Monday morning. The flood happened, the storm happened on Sunday night, and it was devastating. It was like a tidal wave had gone through the place, and just about every small business in Picton was affected. But within 48 hours, through extraordinary work from volunteers, from people all over the region, the clean-up was proceeding extremely well. We've even got some of the businesses back in action, the first of the businesses back in action again. We had the Prime Minister there within 48 hours declaring disaster relief, or announcing there would be disaster relief. And the resilience of the community is extraordinary. I mean, when I was there on Monday morning, I had 4 or 5 people break down in front of me. They were so upset about how they were going to get back going again. But, you know, it's a great credit to people who live in our regional towns and who run small businesses, that they can get up and going so quickly, and that's exactly what we're seeing in Picton.
And some of those traders, I think, have expressed a desire to be up and running as per normal, most of them by Monday of next week, I think. Now, can we talk more broadly about the campaign? One of the features of the Liberal campaign has been some targeted spending and local emphasis on their seats. What's happening in the electorate of Hume? Do you have a tally running on the announcements and promises that have been authorised for your seat so far?
Well, look, there's lots that we're doing in my seat, as in every other seat across Australia, Greg. I guess the single most important thing is what we are doing to support small businesses, like those businesses in Picton, to invest, to grow, and to employ. And, you know, far and away the biggest economic impact in every electorate, I think, is in getting that right. I mean, the truth is that most jobs in Australia, new jobs, are being created by smaller businesses, and they have to find a way of investing and growing. And we know from historical experience just how important it is to give them the incentive to do that. We saw the company tax cuts, the small business, or the business relief that happened back in the 80s and 90s under Hawke, Keating and then Howard, and we saw tax revenues increase, not reduce, as tax rates came down from 49% down to 30%. We saw tax revenues increase, and the reason that happens is because, given the right incentives, small businesses get out there, they invest, they grow, they employ. That's what I'm looking forward to seeing more of in my electorate. We've seen a lot of it in the last couple of years, and that is far and away the most important thing that has featured in the campaign for my seat. So,
extracting local announcements, what are you saying is the dominant national issue that is being raised with you? I guess you're suggesting that it's economic management, is it?
Well, it is. I mean, the truth is people understand if you have a seat in outer suburban areas or in regional areas, as I do. My seat stretches from southwestern Sydney out into rural Australia, rural New South Wales. People understand that it is these smaller businesses growing that drives our economy, and they know that's where the jobs come from for both older employees, for youth, for younger employees, and everywhere in Australia we've had challenges there that we're now addressing, and so that is far and away, I think, the dominant issue out in a seat like mine. People want to see that growth. And they want to see infrastructure investment, and of course, as the Cities Minister, that's been a real focus for me, and we've had an announcement around the Appin Road in my electorate, and that's fantastic news as well.
All right, well, people are also attuned, I suppose, to the question of affordability, and there are some big promises being laid out here. The biggest is obviously the company tax cut that you've already mentioned. Can you, as a member of the government, guarantee that the surplus projected for 2021 will in fact be delivered, and that a re-elected Turnbull government is determined to stick with that surplus timeline?
Yeah, well, what I can say is that our promises are funded, Greg, and that is the most important thing. We've seen a contrast yesterday where it's clear now from Chris Bowen that Labor's promises are not funded. And they will have a gap. There will be a black hole over the next 4 years.
How can you be so sure of that, though, for your own part, leaving aside the Labor focus just for a moment, but there's this massive pot of $18 billion worth of assumed savings that are just going to fly through the Senate, we're led to believe, at least in the costings. What gives you that confidence when they've been so roundly rejected so far?
Well, I think the Australian people want to see action on these things. I think, you know, that the frustration of the Australian people after the Rudd-Gillard-Rudd experiment and the challenges we've had with minor parties in the Senate, I think there is a strong desire out there to see governments get on with the job.
So you're going to claim a mandate for each and every one of those initiatives, are you?
Well, we're asking for a mandate to do that. That is the purpose of this election. That's why that's exactly what we're asking for right here, right now, Greg. And I think, look, Australians understand that we are the custodians of their tax payments. They want that managed well. And that is exactly what we're going to the Australian people with in this election, that we will manage their tax payments well, we will spend it in the right places, and we're asking for a mandate both in the House of Reps and the Senate, the upper house, to be able to do exactly that.
All right, well, even if magically and hypothetically the Senate did pass all $18 billion worth of those savings initiatives, they're not actually worth $18 billion anymore, are they? Because some of them were to kick in from the 1st of July and they can't possibly, let's presume, until August or September. So the budget repair work that you might have done can't be done because those numbers don't stack up, do they?
Oh, look, Greg, we're confident the numbers will stack up. I mean, there's no doubt about that. We are asking for a mandate in the Senate. There's no doubt about that either. And, you know, Australians have really got to make a choice here. Do they want to have a dysfunctional Senate with minor parties calling the shots and stopping a government from getting on with the job? And that is, you are right to say that's an important issue in this election. It absolutely is. We are asking for the mandate to be able to get on with the job, and we are very confident that the numbers will stack up if we have that mandate, and that's what we're asking for.
All right, we've passed the halfway point, and the polls, they're a little confusing to read at times, but broadly speaking, they're suggesting it's close, 50-50 or 1 point either side of that, two-party preferred. Do you actually believe those numbers?
Look, I don't spend a lot of time worrying about the polls. I frankly find that the feedback I get on the ground in my electorate, which is quite diverse, as I say, it ranges from out of suburban Sydney out into rural areas, that feedback is the definitive feedback. And, you know, I think Australians just simply want a government to get on with the job of managing the economy, encouraging jobs growth, building the infrastructure, and that is exactly what we're focused on.
But you'd be looking for a little bit more momentum heading your way as we get towards the business end of this campaign, wouldn't you? More than is evidenced in the polls so far.
Well, look, I take my evidence from what I hear on the ground. As I say, you know, I always say to my team, once you've made a dozen or so calls, or you've spoken to a dozen or so people on the street, you've got a pretty good sense of what's going on. And I'm very confident that there are deep concerns about Labor's track record in economic management. Look, you know, when they were in power, they saw spending growing at about 4% in real terms every year. We've halved that spending growth. We've brought it under control at a slower rate than the growth in revenue. That means each year we're bringing the deficit down. We can get ourselves to a point where we can start repaying debt. That clearly won't happen under Labor. We had 3 serious economists this morning saying that there's a threat to our credit rating from Labor's plan, from their 32 pages of mush. So, you know, I think Australians are coming to terms with that. They do understand it, and they're certainly the conversations I'm having on the ground.
All right, well, let's see where it goes with 3 and a bit weeks still remaining. Angus Taylor, for your thoughts on the campaign in the electorate of Hume so far, thanks so much for your time.